Hello, everybody. Hope you're having a great day. My name is Jake from Umbrella IT Services, and today we're going to be talking about accounting and tips for small businesses during the age of COVID-19 with a good friend of mine, Brian Gray from Gray and Associates on the North Shore. So, if you could please leave a like on this video, it really helps Brian and I out. If you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe to the channel. If you have a suggestion for a future video, please make sure to email us at techtips@umbrellaitservices.ca or leave a comment down below. So now that that's out of the way, I know that times are tough right now for small and medium businesses in Canada due to COVID-19, and Brian has spent a lot of time looking into different subsidies and strategies to make things a little bit more manageable for business owners in the Greater Vancouver area. So we're going to be breaking down topics like CEBA today, the Canadian Emergency Business Account, CEWS, the Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy, TWS, the Temporary Wage Subsidy, and a number of other topics. So I'd like to give Brian a big thank you for coming on today. Brian, how's your day going?
Well, so far so good, Jake. Thanks very much for asking, and thanks for having me on your channel here. This has been delightful.
No worries. I'm really excited to talk with you today because I know a lot of other business owners like myself are fairly confused with what's going on. The government hasn't been explicitly clear with what they're doing to help us out, and I've learned a lot from just speaking with you privately about this stuff, so I'm very excited to share some of your knowledge with the public today. How's your day going so far? Anything crazy happening?
Well, speaking of the CEBA loan, if we want to just jump right into that, I mean,
Sure.
I had some conversations this morning just with two clients on that exact issue. And I don't know if we can just go driving right into it if you want.
That's
But
fantastic. Yeah, let's do it. What is CEBA, just so people know, and then let's have
yeah,
it.
yeah. So CEBA is the Canadian Emergency Business Account. It's a $40,000 interest-free loan till December 31st, 2022, and if you repay it, and which the details are not quite clear, but if you repay it by December 31st, 2022, the 10,000 of that $40,000 loan is forgiven. Now, it's not free, of course. It's taxable. It's considered a subsidy, a government subsidy. But even so, it might be the 10,000 really helps. I mean, in some businesses, it's going to make the difference, and in others, it's going to be just like icing on the cake. But having $40,000 in your business bank account, not knowing if you're going to need it or not, is a nice security blanket for many, many small business owners. And the people I've been speaking to, some of them are even unaware the fact that they may be eligible. The rules changed in the last few weeks, expanding the CEBA loan program from having to have a T4 summary to the tune of $20,000 of wages paid in 2019 to having what they call $40,000 in non-deferrable expenses. You'll have to forgive me because most of the claims I've been doing are based on the wage criteria, but the $40,000 non-deferrable expenses is something that many small business owners actually do have. They just don't realize it. And when you go through their accounting statements, you might find that, even a $200,000 gross revenue, you're going to have $40,000 of expenses there, quite likely. The guys I was speaking with this morning, they've got several companies, and we were looking at some of the other ones that they've got going with where the wages aren't quite up to 20 grand. They just got some part-timers in there. But when we look back to see whether or not there's $40,000 of expenditures, well, I basically left it up to them. I said, look, you probably do. You just need to go and look. And so they are on the road now to trying to see if they can get a couple $40,000 CEBA loans. And again, it's not to be egregious or anything. It's just more of a security blanket. In this particular case, one of the many ways where this COVID-19 has really taken the wind out of their sails, that there's nothing going on, and they got to pay rent, they got to keep the employee going, and they've got to pay debts and things like that. So it's going to really, really help. And another one where it's a similar idea where he just called the other day where I actually phoned a client on my cell phone on the way back from lunch one day, and I said, did you consider these wage subsidies, because I've been emailing you and he's not responding. I finally got him to look at things, and amongst the wage subsidy and the CEBA loan, I think he said about $85,000 dropped into his bank account.
Wow.
So he phoned me up to say thank you. I would have never thought of this. So even though the media has it played out on the TV, Trudeau was on TV he was on TV and the internet almost every day during that whole COVID thing, explaining
Yep.
these subsidies. But business owners often just think, this is just another tactic to get you, and I think really in the long run, the Liberals are trying to help. They're doing a reasonable good job. I'm not. I can say my political preference is not the Liberals, but given the fact that they stepped up to the plate, I think it's been quite good for Canada having
Yeah,
done that.
absolutely. Again, politics aside, I think that again, having that extra $40,000 for my business and being able to help my employees out and make sure we're keeping food on the table and we're getting the infrastructure that we need and the bills are getting paid, it is kind of
Yeah.
difficult to be not grateful for that. So, you mentioned the $40,000 of expenses. Now, is that a qualifier for this loan? What other qualifiers are there if people
Well,
want to apply for this CEBA loan?
yeah. So there's two qualifiers. If you don't have the wage expense for 2019 in excess of $20,000 and less than 1.5 million, I
Mm-hmm.
might add. So there's a range there. If you're over 1.5 million in payroll last year, you won't qualify for or I'm sorry, we're mixing this up. You kind of threw me there.
No
So
worries, sorry.
I was thinking of more like the CEWS wage subsidy. The CEBA loan has two qualifiers now. One of them is the $20,000 to $1.5 million wages, which would have been payable or paid in 2019. That comes off a T4 summary that must have been filed for 2019.
Mm-hmm.
The other one that came out is if you go to your bank website, you'll see that there are two buttons to click. One of them is if your wages are less than $20,000.
Mm.
So if the wages for 2019 are less than 20,000, it takes you into a whole other gambit of questions. And I must say, I was talking to somebody by video conference yesterday from the Canadian Tax Federation. What are they called? Yeah, and Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses, CFIB, and I was explaining to him how the information that you have to upload to the CRA to qualify for the $40,000 non-deferrable expense criteria is somewhat putting some people in their backseat thinking, do I really want to give the CRA, my stuff, like fearful for their, knocking on the door. It's almost like Gestapo sort of things. I shouldn't say that.
Mm-hmm.
But there is the fear out there that, you give them a whole bunch of information, they might come back and do a payroll or GST audit on you. I don't know. But I think that there's two camps to that. There's those who really need it and have the legitimate expenses that should just file those things, upload whatever it takes to get your loan if you don't otherwise qualify under the wage criteria and your wages are less than $20,000. There's the other camp where if you're on the edge and you're not sure whether your expenses are legitimate and stuff like that, well, then maybe you should double think. Don't apply. But don't just apply to apply. I think you really need to think about that. And there are some clients out there that might have perhaps questionable expenses or things they don't want to throw into the basket in order to qualify. There are a bucket load of other businesses out there that will qualify, and I'm sure they're just stepping back because they say, I don't want to deal with the government. They're going to come, rake me over the coals. And I
Yeah.
don't think that, this is my opinion, I don't think that is going to happen.
Yeah,
I think
I had a few concerns like that actually. I know that we spoke about that because I noticed there's some very vague language when you do accept the loan related to the way that you run your business, not even necessarily the way that it's audited financially, but it was actually talking about the operational side of the business, which was quite worrying to me. And at the end of the day, I ended up taking the loan because I run a legitimate business. I'm not doing anything funny. The way I run my business has been very successful. And I'm sure that most folks out there, 99% of small business owners, are on the same page. So the advice you gave me was just take the loan. It's you need the money. It's not going to hurt you at all. And if they do come in and audit you, your books is straight. The way you operate your business is straight. There's nothing to worry about if you've got nothing to hide with it. So Again, I was a little bit reluctant at first, but again, the thing that you mentioned earlier, where you get to keep the $10,000 and all you have to do is pay the taxes on it, it's a no-brainer in my opinion, especially for somebody in my range where you've got anywhere from 5 to 10 staff, and that $40,000, it's not a lot of money, for especially for a larger business where you've got 10, 15, 20 staff. Maybe it's a week of payroll. But it's still a week of payroll. You know what I mean? Like for me, it's a couple of weeks of payroll, which is great. And I really appreciated you bringing that up and telling me, hey, did you apply for this? You should know about this, and here's all the ins and outs of it. So, have you noticed with your clients that a lot of people have been taking it? A lot of people have been benefiting from CEBA. Is there any other loan structure out there, or any other sort of subsidy that people have been using that has been beneficial for their business?
Well, okay, the CEBA loan is if you've got wage expenses between 20,000 and 1.5 million, I think it's the easiest thing to apply for. It's an online application, and it just shows up. I mean, if you check those boxes, I must say, and I'm going to diverge a little bit here.
Yep.
The CEBA loan is meant not to line the pockets of owners. I mean, it's very clear in the banking agreement, and if you read the CRA's website, it's to be used for operations. So if you were to get a $40,000 loan and then throw it into the stock market, hoping that you'd have a bump, so you should, as a business owner, you should be prepared to show, or at least prove to CRA, if they ever come and ask, that you used this money for legitimate purposes. You didn't throw it in a GIC, you didn't buy some investment, and you used it for operating activities of the company. And so I even say, don't even put it in a savings account. Just keep it in the general checking account. You're not paying interest on it, so don't push it. Don't try and claim or benefit from having that cash. It is a loan, after all. You got to pay it back. So, keep that in mind too. Hopefully your business plan is such that by December 2022, you can pay it back. And if you can't, then the $40,000 loan converts into an interest-bearing loan, which I think is around 5 or 6%. It's still not too bad. But I forgot the question now. So you said...
Yeah, no worries. That is a really good point, that the 5% or 6% isn't that bad. To touch on what you just brought up there, when do you recommend people pay this back? Is this something where we should just hold on to it until things stabilize, and should we wait until the last minute and pay the bill in November 2022? What are you recommending for people, or is it a more individual based sort of thing?
Well, okay, I think free money should never be repaid until it's due.
Gotcha.
And that's
that's a good way to say it.
Is it free? I mean, maybe some business owners applied for it out there, and they don't, they kind of like they got it for some reason. I can say that one wealthy client of ours, I sent him all the stuff. I said, why don't you go for it? It's the easiest 10,000 you might ever see. And he said, no, I can't. I just have ethics. He didn't need the money, and he certainly doesn't. So he didn't do that. My other thing is that a question came up like that, similar, during a meeting somewhere, or a casual conversation. I said, well, you can just pay the loan back. I think you can pay it back whenever you want. If you feel like not taking the subsidy, I'm sure they'll take it back. I mean, it's security. Whatever we're seeing right now, like this pandemic is only just started. I think it's going to be it's going to have an effect over 5, 10 years. Certainly by December 2022, we will hopefully know what's going on in the planet. And even if you don't use that money, just park it in your checking account. It's like a security blanket in the event that, things aren't rolling out as well as you thought they would. And I'm glad to have the $40,000 loan at 5%.
Exactly. That's what I've been doing with it. It just stays in its account. Anytime I pay payroll, I take it out of there. Then that's it. And then rent and just the basic expenses for the office. Just got a new office right in January, and then this hit. So got a brand new office that's got nothing in it, which is unfortunate. But like you said, I think it is a very good idea just to take it. If you don't need it, it's a good security blanket in case things go south in a couple of months, because I think that people are still trying to determine what the economic effects of this is going to be long term. We're
Hmm.
seeing a lot of projections on the stock market and on the housing market. Actually, I was reading the other day that the housing market's apparently projected to drop 18%. But when I speak to my realtor friends, they say that it's business as usual. Obviously, there's been a little bit of a drop off, like open houses can't happen anymore, but for a lot of people, they're still flipping houses the same way they used to. So I'm very, very cautious and interested to see kind of what the future holds with this.
Well, and as you know, going further with that, I think a lot of public companies are not issuing guidance any longer because they don't know. Like they're just stuck, right?
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to talk to you about this stuff because everywhere that I talk to, everyone's got a different answer, and it seems to be, again, a very confusing situation, which is why I do like your opinion quite a bit because, again, it's a much more cautious opinion and a more common sense approach, which is why I've always liked working with you and always appreciated your advice because it's very common sense, very practical. So, again, I do thank you for that.
Well, you're very welcome. Absolutely, Jake. Anytime.
So,
Um,
related to CEWS, the Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy, what is this exactly, and how do we qualify for that?
all right. So it's supposed to be simple, right? You know, they, to the Liberals' credit, they cranked this out rather quickly. And
Hmm.
at first, I did get a secondhand conversation from someone in the restaurant industry said that, oh, it's simple. You just fill the spreadsheet out and you submit the answer and your money shows up. Yeah, that's true. If you read the rules, you have to be fairly cautious. And there is a website. If you just do CEWS on Google, you'll find the Canadian
Mm.
Emergency Wage Subsidy information right on the Revenue Canada's website.
Yeah.
You got to go through it carefully, and there is a spreadsheet there, and you need to look at that spreadsheet and not mess with the formulas in there too much, because otherwise things will calculate wrong, by the way. Which I had one client who first tried to figure it out, was overriding the formulas and deleting them and it's just not the way to go. So you just need to plunk your information in there as you see it fit. I could, well, I can't go through that with you on this channel. Like there's a whole bunch of nuances, but basically it boils down to this: $847 per week subsidy. That's the limit. And so depending on the number of employees you have, you could be getting that money back into your bank account. So you pay them whatever per week, and the limit is up to 75% of their wage, or 847 cap per employee per week.
Oh,
And
wow.
so to not go through that process is probably sort of like being ignorant to the fact. So having said that, there's some criteria. You have to meet a revenue decline threshold, and the rules are, I even got to look at them again because every time I look at them, um, sorry, every time I get on this subject, I refer back to the website that CRA has.
Hmm.
And,
I'll have to get these
basically,
links from you, and I'll throw them down in the description for people so they can check them out in
I,
case they change.
I could, yeah, I'll get those links over to you. But
Hmm.
basically, for the month of March, so what they're trying to do is they compare let's just start with March 2020. If your revenue decline in March 2020 went down by 15% relative to March 2019, or relative to the average of January and February 2020. So that's the first criteria for qualifying for the CEWS for the first application period.
Hmm.
After March, it went to 30%. And May and June is 30%. I'm sure it's going to stay 30%. They actually haven't announced the extension on that. It might go to 40% or something, to sort of like try and phase this out. But your revenue has to have declined 15% in the months of March relative to those two other baselines. And for the month of April, May, and June, it was 30%. Now, having said that, there are little nuances which were kind of surprising. If you qualified in the first period, say you qualify, well, let's say you didn't qualify in March,
Mm.
your revenues were not off by 15%. April comes along, the pandemic's at full steam ahead, and your revenues they did crash by 30%. You could apply for the CEWS for that filing period for the month of April, your payroll for the month of April, And if all of a sudden your revenues flew back up in the month of May and you no longer qualified for the month of May, you would still qualify for the CEWS, because if you qualify in one period, you automatically qualify for the following period. So this is something that is rather surprising. I even question myself whether it's right, and I check the website every time I look at this, and it's still there. It says here, I'll read it to you actually. It says if you determine that you qualify for the CEWS in one claim period, you will automatically qualify for the following claim period. So now that's not legislation, but that is the CERA's website. If you want to read the legislation, I can send you that link too, but it's not a very fun read. No legislation is. You know, following along, and in the link, there is actually, well, I'll send you the link so that your followers can then download the CEWS spreadsheet, which I was referring to earlier. Now you have to have payroll data to do this. What I'm saying is that to have payroll data means you need to have books up to date, and of course you need to have comparative revenue information and all this sort of stuff. So if you're a very small business and you're working kind of like out of a shoebox and you only do things at the end of the fiscal year, you're going to have a hard time maybe doing this. But talk to your accountant, and even just a spreadsheet or something, tally revenues up and compare them and see where you're at. This is something not to be just overlooked. Much like the client who I said phoned me and told me thank you very much. Not like he runs a shoebox company, but he doesn't get his bookkeeper to be on top of the books and all that all the time. He did have 2019 data, but he didn't have 2020 data at the time I called him. So he was very happy to, first of all, get his books up to date, and secondly, get a bunch of money dropped into his bank account. By the way, the CEWS is taxable. Once again, it's taxable. It's a big deal. If you're a small business corporation, 11% in BC is not a big deal.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, that's really good to know as well. And now I know we've got the cute names like CEBA and CEWS. What is the cute name for TWS? Is it TWS, the temporary wage subsidy?
Yeah, well, that one's fallen off the front page for sure. Temporary wage subsidy was the first thing that was announced when the pandemic crisis, the COVID-19 emergency stuff was announced by the federal government. 10%. Oh my God. Well, 10%. I told a couple of guys, 10%. They said, "Give me a break. That's good for one day. I need something more because there's no revenue and all this sort of thing."
Yeah.
That was basically 10% of gross wages, and it had I'm just trying to remember here. It was the 10% of gross wages. Now, this was not something you applied for. What it was or what it still is something that you pay employees as you always do. Mm-hmm. But when it comes time to remit your source deductions for those employees, you can reduce your source deduction remittance by 10% of their gross wages. There's a couple of thresholds there. One of them is that there's a cap per employee of $1,375 cumulative. And there's a cap for the corporation itself, or the business, I should say, of $25,000 cumulative. And then there's each remittance, if you're claiming a wage, remittance deduction of more than the tax withheld, then you got to hold on to that little bit that you can only reduce your source deductions by the amount of tax withheld. So if you're 10% of your wage subsidies more than that, you have to hang on to that and claim it the next time. And the series, it's a little bit vague about this, how this is going to work. If anybody's gone through this, they also got to know that this affects the CEWS, the Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy. You're supposed to calculate your temporary wage subsidy if you're eligible. And even if you don't claim it, that's the way it was, you had to deduct it from your Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy, CEWS benefit.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff.
Gotcha. So you can stack these benefits then. If you get CEBA, you're also able to get CEWS and TWS, or do some of these? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So CEBA is separate. That's a $40,000 loan. That's over here. The Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy, that's CEWS we call it, is you can't get the CEWS and the temporary wage subsidy.
Gotcha.
The offsetting for the temporary wage subsidy reduces the CEWS. Now, there was another little nuance in the temporary wage subsidy on the CRA's website where they would allow you to elect that temporary wage subsidy in respect of your business was 0%. And I guess what they're trying to say is that it's too complicated, and to claim the temporary wage subsidy is sometimes a pain. And why not just, and because it just reduces the CEWS, why bother, right? So I think this is why they're just saying you can elect to not, or elect to have the temporary wage subsidy reduced in your business from 10% to 0%.
Yeah.
There's some sort of form that they're going to hand out or declaration that they're going to make you sign at some point. I haven't heard anything about it, but if somebody else does, let me know.
Yeah, comment down below with that for sure. So I know another loan that we were briefly discussing is the CECRA. So I'm assuming this is the Canadian Emergency Commercial Rent Account, but I don't know that. This is something to help people that are paying commercial rent. So do you want to break that down for us as well? Again, just what is it? What do we need to qualify for it? Who's it for? That kind of stuff.
Well, okay. I can't say I'm a very knowledgeable on that one. Partly because it hasn't gone over very well with landlords. The few restaurant clients we have and others, the landlords are often, well, in our realm, our client base, the landlords have not been too accommodating. They've often are offshore owners. They say, hey, I don't want to subsidize. Well, basically, it was supposed to be the landlord covers 25%, the tenant pays 25%, and the CRA would cover 50%. But the landlords don't even want to do the 25%. I think it's gone over badly, and I should have asked my friend from the CFIB yesterday whether or not anything's been done with that. He didn't bring it up, but it is out there. And it's how does it work now? I think now forgive me for not knowing because I haven't gone through the application process, but I believe the landlord needs to apply for it. It's the opposite scheme of the residential subsidy here in British Columbia, where the tenant actually applies for the subsidy and the landlord gets it. It's the opposite way around, as I understand, for the commercial rent account.
That's very interesting to me, the 25% that the landlord has to pay. I can't imagine that would fly with like 80% of the people that I know that are landlords. They have such razor thin margins. They're already overburdened trying to just get the maintenance done because the workers in the city are so overbooked. And so I can't imagine that being a good solution somewhere. Like maybe in Manitoba or Saskatchewan, where they don't have this housing bubble sort of situation that Toronto and Vancouver have, but I would imagine for that to be effective here, you'd have to drop that number to almost zero, but that's just my opinion. I don't know a lot of barren landlords other than the ones that you mentioned that are overseas that don't have any interest in helping Canadians anyways.
Who was I talking to? There was one landlord, I think he was a landlord, and he was on good terms with his tenant, and he was just going to give him a break. Never mind this subsidy thing. He was just going to do it among themselves. I mean, maybe he should apply. I think I mentioned it, but again, here comes the fear. You set the government up, you give them all your information, and some people just would rather not have too much information in the CRA's hands.
Yeah.
That's not to say you should be hiding it, because quite frankly, the CRA has a lot of power. They can come in and, seize that. They can seize your records if they figure something's wrong. That's the worst case scenario. But yeah, so being fearful is one thing, but being like a little naive is another. I think what I'm trying to sort of impress is that there's two main benefits here going on for Canadian business owners, small business owners. And that's the CERB, that $40,000 interest-free loan with a $10,000 forgiveness at the end.
Yeah, the CEBA.
And the Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy, which has been a blessing for a lot of small business owners, quite frankly.
Do you have any other subsidy programs, this kind of stuff that you'd want to cover, or do you want to move on?
Well, in the light of COVID-19, these are the main ones. I mean, the CERB, the CEBA, the temporary wage subsidy, the CEWS, we call it, and the CEWS, and then this CECRA, which is the Canadian Emergency Commercial Rent Account. And then, of course, there's the residential rent subsidy, which is not to do with business owners, but it's out there as well. And then there's the CERB, sorry. The CERB was individuals as well. So anybody who's lost their job, would it be lost their job due to COVID-19 would be able to apply for the CERB. And interesting, just on CERB, so yesterday we had a video conference with about 6 business owners and the individual from the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses, and a lot of the business owners were complaining, trying to get laborers into their shops and whatnot. When they're getting $2,000 to $3,000 in subsidy money already, they may think, I can just lay low. Yeah. Now, at that point, they were frustrated that people weren't coming back to work. But I think the way the Liberals have laid it out now, if you get a call, if you're collecting the CERB right now, and you get a call from your former employer to come back to work, your job's ready, and everything's safe and all the rest of it, and you refuse or you don't respond, you might end up having to pay that CERB back at some point.
See, I think that's a great addition, because I do know a lot of folks they're kind of taking advantage of it, and I know a lot of small businesses now that are hurting because of this. They really just need their people back, and again, maybe it's not a job or an industry like yours or mine where we have to deal with people that are highly educated, and it's a very high technical skill, and it takes a long time to become a CPA. It takes a very long time to become a good IT guy and get these certifications in place. So it doesn't really affect me or my business, because the people that I pay are making much more than that subsidy. But I do know a lot of small business owners, hair salon places, maybe retail shop owners, again, like the backbone of Canadian business, right? And these people are just dying trying to get people to come back to work. And I think we may have kind of overhit the mark here. An approach that I would have liked to have seen instead of this subsidy is the government actually going to the banks, the people that are collecting this money from all of us, and saying, we're going to, I forget the word, but if we're going to freeze everything for 3 months, add it to the end of their term. So if you're in a 12-month lease right now, or you've got a 12-month rent going on, those first 3 months of COVID, all debts are now frozen and added. Another 3 months is added to the end of it, because then you wouldn't have this hyperinflation, you wouldn't have this money being dumped into the economy, you wouldn't have people panicking to pay their truck loans, pay their rent, pay everything they're trying to pay. It would all just be frozen, but the banks would know that they're going to get their money just a little bit later. I feel like that would have been a much better approach, but who am I, So,
well, Jake, to your point, I think some of that was going on. I can't possibly follow it all. There was a lot of moving goalposts there in the last 3 months, and they're still moving around. So
100%. So yeah. I do have some questions about yourself and Grain Associates for you. So how did you get into accounting? What experience do you have in the field? What's your story? We usually touch on this stuff first, but I know you're eager to get into the CEBA stuff. So how did you get into accounting, and what experience do you have in the field?
Well, I guess I was a very boring person or something like that. Well, I actually don't know how this happened, but it was a long time ago, and I just I guess at one point I was working. I was a laborer. I was just sort of, I finished high school and I was doing stuff and really not getting anywhere. And I thought, I'd love to have my own business at some point. And so then I went back to college. I moved back home with my parents for a few years. That helped, because I couldn't possibly afford to live on my own and go to school.
Yeah.
So I got a college degree from Douglas College, or not a degree, what was it? The diploma in accounting. And then after that, I went to SFU and got a 4-year business bachelor's in business administration from Simon Fraser University. And in that time, around third year, I remember talking to an accounting professor, or was it a finance professor? I forget. But he was describing to the class the difference between the 3 accounting bodies. One of them was chartered accountant. The other one was certified management accountant, which used to be registered industrial accountants. And then there was the CGA, general I can't even remember the CGAs. Anyways, they generally, the two latter ones were generally in industry, whereas the chartered accountants were out there, plying their wares out in the public. And that caught my attention, and it was also the most difficult one to get. And for whatever reason, I felt energized, and I went for it. So there I am. I got my CA designation in 1993. Then went to work for a guy in Metrotown who had moved from the North Shore over here. And then in 2000, I bought his practice, and we phased him out. And in around 2000, Jeff will forgive me here, but at around 2014 or so, Jeff Reed, my business partner, came in as a business partner, and it's been a party ever since. What am I saying? I remember during my convocation at the chartered accountant thing, where the partner of the firm I was with said to me, "How does it feel?" And I said, "I'm sure glad it's over." And I meant the uniform final exam. I'd written it, I'd passed, and I was standing there with my rolled up piece of paper, and I was, yeah. And I said, "I sure glad it's over." And he says, "It's just the beginning." And, at that time, I said, "Are you kidding me? I'm relaxing." and I guess in hindsight, he was right. So there you go. And I think that's the same with any kind of career move that anyone out there makes. So if you go out and get your designation, or you go strive for credentials or some sort of profession, you may get over that hurdle, the educational part, but from there on in, it is just the beginning. And to say that I don't go to school anymore is wrong. I'm learning every day, and that's what keeps my brain active most of the time. Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's how I got into accounting. That's how I run this practice, and blah blah. Yeah.
Very cool. What kind of benefits and what kind of services does a good accounting firm provide for businesses? So, for example, if you've taken over a business where their books were a little bit shaky, or again, they were missing out on these subsidies because they weren't keeping their ear to the ground, do you have an example of a business that you've worked with and you've kind of helped turn them around, or just general businesses like mine? I've noticed a ton of benefits working with you. But do you have any just a general reason for people to be using a professional accountant versus doing their own books?
Well, look, I say to lots of small business owners, especially when they're starting out, if you know, or if you have an aptitude for doing like the general day-to-day bookkeeping, then go for it. It's not exactly rocket science, but it does take some attention. It's not just, download and click and it's done. You have to watch what you're doing and understand how the balance sheet and the income statement integrate.
Yeah.
If you can do a reasonably good job, and you hire an accountant to do your year-end or quarterly GSTs or whatever the case is, you can, accountants charge fees and like any other professional. So keep those fees down, especially when you're on your your growth pattern. You're starting out from the gate, from ground zero, and you'll be better off. There's the other people who maybe have retired, and we've had a few people that have retired, and they've got a nest egg of retirement funds or whatever, and they come along and they want to start a business and they don't know anything about it. So they hire an accounting firm, they get a bookkeeper, and they just pass off all of that to other people, and they just go out and they sales and marketing is their forte, so that's what they do best, and they have the funds to pay for all the admin in the background going on. Now, what does it take to be a good accountant? I think, I always reflect on the uniform final exam, which I wrote back in 1993, and the answers were usually, you have to, with every kind of problem or question, you need to come up with maybe 3 solutions and then pick one. And I think that's the attitude I've had all along. When there's an issue or a problem with a client's, whatever, a tax issue, or it's usually tax, quite frankly, or maybe an HR issue with an employee, try and think of more than one solution, and then say what you would do. Or I say what I would do, but it's not the answer. It's just what I would do, but I'm not saying to do that. You got 3 options, and you need to select which one you have. And I think if you can give clients, or as an accountant, if we can give clients a solution, which is not just one line, but it's a couple. And, I'll get criticized for this because some clients say, "I don't want to know all the options. Just tell me what to do." And I have to back off and say, it's your decision, not mine, but I'm going to give you the 3 things. And if you want my opinion, I'll give you mine. And then we'll go from there, and we'll pick the best one that makes most common sense for your business and your life, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, sorry, back to the question. I think if accountants can do that and speak in common sense terms without getting their clients in trouble, or themselves for that matter, then everybody will be in way better shape going down the road.
Yeah. So since 1993, when you started, have you seen technology modify the field at all? Because obviously programs like QuickBooks now, they do all the tracking and that kind of stuff automatically. It gives you all these reports automatically. Now, as a business owner, again, I know IT. I don't understand accounting. I don't understand bookkeeping. I don't pretend to. As you know, I usually defer to you, and I am one of those people saying, "What do I need to do? Just tell me what to do." But have you noticed any dramatic changes in it? Because even though I do have the QuickBooks program and I have some other things to do some analytics for me, I still defer to you at the end of the day. I say, what reports do I need to look at? How should I be tracking this stuff? What can I do to kind of ease the pain and make sure that I'm not being only fiscally responsible, but also being strategic with my finances and planning ahead? Has technology reduced the need for accounting? Has it benefited accountants? What are your thoughts on the technological effects of technology on accounting?
Well, technology has been huge in the accounting field. Quite frankly, it's just been massive. I mean, I guess when I was articling, the computers, they called them 386s. You probably don't even know what I'm talking about.
No, see, this is before, I think this might be definitely before I was using computers, but I do know the term, yeah. i386s, I believe.
Yeah, my first computer was an Apple IIe, which cost about $3,000, and it had an 8 processor in it, and you could watch the letters across the screen, and the modem cost $500. So despite that, from the accounting field, things were paper-based for a long time. All the files were in big fat files, and there was no linking, and just human power as well. Even this firm, when I first acquired it, we had 2 receptionists and 1 filing clerk, and a couple of bookkeepers and people that were doing files, and so the labor costs weren't as high, quite frankly, but the number of people that you had to house was like twice the size as what we're living in right now. And our businesses thrived throughout all of that, and we've reduced our staff. Not that that's a good thing, but I think what it's done is it's taking the accounting to a newer level. Like, instead of just doing the mundane stuff, clients are now able to jump on board with QuickBooks Online, or I think Sage has an online version, and they can download their bank statements. And if they have a little bit of aptitude, they can actually post things, and they can do their own bookkeeping. Whereas in the past, having to do that in a manual ledger and all that was a bit of they didn't know where it went at the end. They would just put all these numbers down, and it didn't mean anything. There was no real-time financial reporting or anything for small business owners. Now they have the power to look at their financial information on a monthly, quarterly basis in real time.
Yeah.
And like Jake, you can call me up and say, hey, I'm having a problem. We can just log right into your system and have a look at it. You use QuickBooks Online. I don't think that's a problem saying, but just look on there right now and say, oh, here's the problem, or here we need this report. And this, we do this quite frequently with other clients. So technology has come a long way in the accounting field. Like our whole file system, you don't really understand what that is, but we do files, and they used to be all paper-based. And about maybe 10 years ago, we took all our paper files that used to be housed in a locker, costing us money every month, and we hired a person to backscan all of that stuff, because we have to keep documents for a period of time, especially for the current clients, because if they need something from the 1990s, we need to be able to go back and say, oh, the building cost, you bought the building in 1990, here's the purchase document. So we need that. Often clients lose these things.
Yeah.
So we have all that. We backscanned everything. Now everything is online. I can be probably anywhere on the planet, and if a client emails me or calls me on my phone for a question, and needs back old documentation and whatnot, or even just needs to know currently what's going on, I can help them out, not entirely, but quite a lot. And it's
Yeah.
just mind-boggling where we've come, perhaps in the last 10 years. Yeah.
That's good to know. Yeah, we have another interview actually with Andrew Jackson from North Shore Digital. It's a SEO and digital marketing firm on the North Shore as well. And he was asking me as well, how has the whole COVID situation affected us? And I was saying that it's been a really good opportunity for people to be able to develop their businesses, and relating to what you're talking about, where the automation that we're able to do in IT for the majority of our clients now is very similar to what you just said about accounting, which is you're getting rid of the mundane stuff and you're focusing on a higher level of service. You're doing analyzing. You're looking at things in a much bigger picture, and you're able to be more strategic with it. You're doing a lot less 4 hours of copying cells over by hand, and you're doing a lot more analysis on the data and looking at trends and making recommendations and strategizing. So it's very interesting to know that that's how it's affected accounting, because I know a lot of folks that I do speak to who do stocks, um, people who do technical things with financials are kind of worried about this whole AI creep that's kind of going on. Do you have any fears about that?
Well, it's here and it's here to stay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've always said, and here's my projection for the next 20 years. I think that the preparation of personal income tax returns will be all done within the CRA's computer system.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, like, reflecting back 10 years ago, before e-filing came along for personal income tax returns, we would print all this stuff, pile it into boxes, and then fly downtown, literally in a car, not really flying, but go downtown, deliver all these hundreds and hundreds of personal tax returns printed out to the CRA. Now we don't do that. It's just a click of the button and it's filed.
Yeah.
And a lot of the data we're getting is actually being provided by the CRA, because a lot of the investment advisors particularly, and the employers are all, they have to report all this stuff on various slips and whatnot anyway. So CRA has tons of this information, and it'll just be a matter of time before they have other things, such as your personal business information and your rental income information, and your offshore stuff for that matter, because there's foreign disclosure statements that have to be filed. So I think maybe accountants, their participation in one particular area, such as filing personal tax returns, is going to be gone. I think it's just going to be taken over by an automated process within CRA, and I think it'll be driven by artificial intelligence.
Yeah, yeah, I agree entirely. I think a lot of this stuff again is just a matter of getting the parameters correct, and then accounting for all of the different variables that can happen, and then you're done. You know what I mean? Especially with the recent expansion of government, and like you said, all the information that they're collecting about folks, it really is just a matter of time until you have this robot. And that's what I like as well, is that there's the joke where it's like, how much tax do I owe this year? And the government says, well, we know, but we can't tell you. And it says, okay, well, what if I get it wrong? Well, then we'll put you in a box for the rest of your life, and you're going to live in a cage. And it's like, well, can't you just tell me how much I owe you? No, but if you get it wrong, we're putting you in a cage. So I do imagine it's only a matter of time until they do just have a system where it says, we've seen this much has come in and out of your account, you owe us this much, and if you don't pay by this date, then you're going to have to pay this much interest. And it's just, or maybe it even gets to the point where you don't even have to consent. It's just, it's tax time, the machine comes in, it pulls the money out of your account, and you're done. Maybe there's not even something to think about anymore.
Yeah, and I hate to say that, and hopefully I'm wrong, because I think doing personal tax returns is a very personal thing. It's individualized, and I don't know how far AI can go with that sort of thing. I think it does, contradictory to what many people think about accounting. There is a lot of, how do you say?
It's an art as well as a science.
Yeah, it's not just a numbers thing. It is actually, you have to be sort of colorful and use your whatever side of the brain is that does that sort of like other stuff, not just numbers. I'm not a medical professional, obviously.
Yeah, of course. Okay, that's really good to know. Do you have any tips for folks that are either struggling with their books right now and they want to try to get them under control? Let's say again, this COVID thing is kind of waking
Mm.
everybody up to the reality of fiscal responsibility. Do you have any advice for folks that want to get started on the right foot, or they want to kind of get their existing situation under control? What can they do?
Well, I've been saying this for years, is that you do need to have your accounting, your bookkeeping, the boring stuff has to be kept up to date. You can't just let it slide.
Hmm.
What'll happen is if you let it slide, you'll get into trouble. The CRA will penalize you quite likely. And there was one client we were helping out just last month who hadn't done corporate tax returns for 2 or 3 years. Well, how do I get the Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy? I said, well, you haven't even filed T4 summaries. So things like this, when there's a disaster and you're not ready, in this case, it's COVID-19 or the global pandemic, but it could be anything. For example,
Yeah.
what if all of a sudden what you're selling is no longer involved? What if you're selling typewriters and all of a sudden nobody's buying typewriters anymore? You need to have your books in the order. You need to look at your balance sheet, make sure it's healthy. And if it's not, figure out how to make it healthy.
Hmm.
And often that just, the numbers really, as they say, don't lie. So you need to get the numbers on a piece of paper in front of you. And if you don't have an accountant, get one who can explain to you whether you're in good shape or not, or, just go through it with you. And often the relationship with an accountant may not be just, one visit per year. Most of our clients have been around since 1993.
Yeah.
So I can't say it's been a process of get to know your accountant. The client should not just shop around. And I'm going to say this, not just due to fees. I mean, don't go for the cheapest person on the planet. You need to go for a person that's reasonable, that you get along with, and can understand your business and wants to help you. One of the things that we love here is businesses that are growing, businesses that are perhaps in trouble, that can be pulled out, like the guy I was just mentioning a minute ago. He's got a great business. He just lost track of his financial stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to take care of all of that. But other than that, he's grateful. And that's what I got to say.
Yeah, I always like the idea that you don't pay a good accountant. Like I learned that kind of the hard way. As you know, we need to do a bit of a cleanup on my situation from when I first started, like 7 years ago. But yeah, I just look at it as you pay what you pay, but at the end of the day, again, the amount of subsidies I've gotten, the write-offs I've gotten, all these other benefits that have been provided to me, it's still like the fee that the accountant charges is just a sliver of what you're saving. Not to mention the peace of mind and all of the other benefits that come from just knowing you have a professional handling all of this stuff. And it is really, that's it for me at the end of the day, is just knowing that I have someone professional who's going to be handling my situation. I'm going to be getting strategies from that person. Things are going to be handled for me. It's the same thing as IT, right? It's very
Yep.
overwhelming, scares a lot of people. It's boring. No one cares really until a problem happens, and then it's the end of the world. Like you just said, that client who said, "Oh, are we going to get this temporary wage subsidy? Are we going to get this emergency wage subsidy?" And it goes, "Well, you didn't file your T4s for the last 2 years like I've been begging you to do. So here you go." And if people get hit by ransomware, it's the same thing. No one cares about IT. It's too expensive, and we don't want to pay for you guys. My brother's, the CEO's wife's brother is good enough and he does a great job, and then all of a sudden you get hit by ransomware and you realize you didn't have backups, and 25 years of your business is wiped off the face of the earth, and it costs you $110,000 US to get it back. We've had to clean up situations like that before for some of our clients. So
Yeah, well, listen, I'll give you a plug, Jake. I mean, Umbrella Guys have been fantastic. We've had some issues, and yeah, you're right. We got hit with a little bit of I forget what it was. Was it ransomware or was it
it was, yeah.
threat?
I wasn't even talking about you guys, but yes,
No, I
that's
know.
how.
But I want to give you a plug a little bit here.
Thank you.
You can edit it if you want.
Thank you.
But your guys came in. You said, okay, and here I was, Brian, and because, mind you, when I took over the business, we were trying to keep things lean. Cash flow was an issue always, and I was always doing the thing. So we had all these servers and whatnot in our thing. And when ransomware got hit one night. I'll never forget the phone call when Jeff, my partner, called me up and said something's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I rushed over back to the office in the evening, and there was this crazy thing going on, like a COVID-19 on our server, quite frankly, which was killing everything. And we didn't know what to do. We called your guys in. They came in, cleaned up everything, went through it a couple of times actually, because it is again just like COVID-19. It lingered in every little nick and cranny. We didn't lose any data, but because we had backups and whatnot. But we were able to, like, then I said to Jeff, my business partner, I said, basically, you know what, we're just going to hire these guys and let them take over. And that's what you've done. And you've done a stellar job since. And I must say that every time we have a little hiccup with one of our PCs or something like that, we just click on that little file a ticket, and within a short period of time, usually always the same day, we get a response back, some action going on, and things get resolved. And your guys never let us down so far, and I hope they never do.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. Yeah, again, we try to do the best job that we can. We try to make sure that things are taken care of for folks right away. And customer service, as you know, is one of the biggest things for me. I think it's a big differentiator in what we do, and definitely what you do as well as an accountant. So thank you very much for the kind words. But it's been awesome working with you guys and for you guys. Again, I know things, obviously, we got brought in with, we kind of feel like the Grim Reaper at some points, because we never get introduced to people on positive notes. But like you said, since we've cleaned that mess up for you and we've started managing everything, it has been positive, and we've helped you guys implement things like a new server, and we've done a lot of fun stuff. And that's my favorite part about what I do, which is leveraging the technology and getting you guys all set up for the remote stuff when COVID happened. And I know we just did a refresh to that last week. So yeah, it's a lot of fun working for a lot of different sectors. And surprisingly, accountants and bookkeepers are some of my favorite folks to work for, because we share a lot of different services, right? We work for a ton of different industries. We have to keep up to date with a bunch of really niche, boring information. Well, boring to some people, interesting to us. And yeah, it's been an interesting ride so far. So thank you for the kind words.
Anytime. Just keep it up.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll keep the ship straight for you. Do you have any fundamental tools that people should be using to keep their bookkeeping up to date? I know you mentioned Sage, you mentioned QuickBooks. Is there anything else that folks should be using that you recommend?
Those are the two mainstream small business software platforms that I would suggest. We're fans of QuickBooks because I used QuickBooks back in the 90s, even in the DOS version, and I've been using it all the way along here. I'm really pleased with it. Sage has its nuances, which I think have somewhat been overcome. It can be a humbling experience to use a Sage product, desktop product from a few years ago. Even I get humbled trying to navigate through there.
Yeah,
it's it's meant for larger organizations so that people can't, hide transactions and whatnot. Well, fine, that's good. But in a small business where the owner and maybe the husband and wife are running the business and stuff like that, there's no need for that kind of overall security. I mean, in my opinion, anyways.
Gotcha.
But those are the two main platforms. Get online banking. Get yourself a My Business account with the CRA so you can check your tax information online. Come down the road, and actually it's almost happening now, is that CRA will not be receiving checks. So trying to pay your money with a check it has been in the last 2 years, kind of hard. And the other thing is just on the bookkeeping and things like that. If you are registered for GST or provincial sales tax, in any provincial sales tax in any of the PST provinces, make sure you file those things on time. Sometimes even if you just file on time but don't pay till later, which is what's going on now actually with the COVID-19 relief program under the federal program and even the provincial here in BC, there's extensions to the some of the filing dates are the same, but the payment date is later. So you just got to keep that differentiated. Like, make sure that the payment date and the filing date, let's keep them in mind. And so, I think QuickBooks Online will help you in tabulating those things. And if, in the long run, even if you're not sure if it's complete, I would even CRA's officials would say file something. Don't just ignore it. Amend it later, but file on time.
That makes sense. Do you have any resources or any market leaders, any conferences, websites that you recommend people kind of follow to stay up to date? Obviously, with the COVID-19 government response, but as well as just day-to-day accounting stuff.
Uh, you know, I think if you're into it, that's the name of the manufacturer of QuickBooks. You can. There's nothing to really follow. I mean, accounting's been around since I don't know, like 1300s or something. It was invented in Italy somewhere, so it's very well the same. So I don't say that there's anything to follow with respect to the actual bookkeeping thing.
Mm-hmm.
Your revenues, expenses, your assets, your liabilities, and make sure payroll's done, GST, PST is all being filed on time. And as long as you do that and you keep your records, don't just assume they'll never ask me for my receipts. The bank statement and the Visa statement is fine. No, they'll want to see the receipts. So, just keep all your records. That would be just a rule of thumb in any kind of business ownership. The website to follow would be these COVID-19 relief programs that are being issued by the CRA. They do change from time to time. And if you haven't already looked at it with respect to the subsidies we talked about earlier, go to those websites and read through them. See if maybe you're not missing something. Or maybe you don't even know about it. Like, have a look at it.
Yeah.
Ask your accountant, like, help me out. Don't worry about it. He's going to charge you for that. But you will probably benefit way more than, the fee. Then you can try and do it yourself as well. But if you're focused on your business, trying to get it up and running after COVID shut down or shuttered, if you're a restaurant or a coffee shop or a barber shop or anything like that that's been shuttered during this COVID-19, you may not be too encouraged about having to do books. So if you can find a bookkeeper, get that done. Don't hire your neighbor if they say they did it 20 years ago. Get somebody that actually does it. There's little firms out there that do bookkeeping as their business. Hire them. I know a couple. So if you need any help, I mean, Jake can, you can pass them along. I can send you their links or whatever. They're not individuals. The best thing to have as a bookkeeper would be somebody that you know and trust. But at the same time, there's also this advantageous situation where you hire a bookkeeping company and they just basically take care of you and never mind who's actually doing it. So you're not actually hiring the person, you're hiring the entity. So those are the things I'd say watch out for. If you're trying to get your business back up and running, get that $40,000 CEBA loan, start financing for somebody to help you out.
That's awesome. That's some great advice, Brian. Thank you very much. Do you have anything that you want to promote before we wrap it up?
Promote. You caught me off guard, actually.
Yeah, no worries.
I don't know about promoting. We're all, like our own firm, we're always looking for new clientele and whatnot. We're looking for any kind of business who's on a growth pattern or wants to start up, or anybody who's transitioning, selling their business, or actually looking to buy one, and they don't have an accountant, or they're not too sure about the advice. They want a second opinion or something like that. Come on over. We'll chat on the phone or have a little video conference like this, and we'll try and help you out. We grow this way. I think our fees are reasonable in the whole circumstances.
I've never paid you a dime.
Yeah, actually, that reminds me.
I always get the money back. So, yeah, and everyone that I've sent your way has been super, super happy with things. So we're super happy to promote you. But I'll make sure to link to grayandassociates.ca down below for folks. We'll put the phone number and everything like that as well. I'm going to make sure to get those links from you, and we'll throw those into the description. What's the best way for people to contact you? Just go to the website, phone number, email?
Email is my preference, Brian at grainassociates.ca. My voice messages do come through by email as well, but email is the mode of communication. If it gets complicated, we talk by phone or video, which has been becoming the norm, I guess, these days. But email to get my attention is we got clients pretty much all over the world, mostly focused in the Vancouver Lower Mainland, but many of them are offshore. and up in northern BC and whatnot. So we don't shy away from anybody that has a question. And if we don't know the answer, we'll get someone who does.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Brian. Really appreciate it. Do you have anything else you wanted to cover before we wrap it up?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I'm good with what we talked about. My throat's a little dry.
Oh, no worries. It happens. You got to get some tea or something going on. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that about does it for today then. I'd like to give Brian a big thank you for coming on again, and I hope this video provides everybody with some good solutions and strategies to deal with the ongoing COVID situation and accounting and bookkeeping in general. So everybody, please make sure to check out Brian and his team and Jeff as well at grayandassociates.ca. Again, we'll link to that down below. And if you could please leave a like on this video, it really helps us out. And if you want to see more videos like this, then please subscribe. And if you have a suggestion for a future video or a guest that you'd like to see on the show, please comment down below or email us at techtips@umbrellaitservices.ca. Have a great day, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you.